So we're going to refactor this React button component that was written 3 years ago, and more specifically on December 2nd, 2020. From a bad code into a cleaner code that follows the new standards, uses Tailwind CSS instead of vanilla CSS, and most importantly, follows the S.O.L.I.D clean code principles. So we're going to take this button component from something like this, which is super horrible, that has a lot of mistakes, a lot of issues going on, into a refactored button and refactor it from scratch into something like this that is easier to read, a lot cleaner, and of course, the code is a lot smaller. If you compare this one to this one, that is a huge change. And of course, I'm going to walk you through every single step, why I did this and how I did this, and what is the intention about doing every single piece of step, why you remove this piece of code and why you do that. And of course, I'm going to take you through every single step and what I do to take this component from something like this into something like this. So if you're just getting started with clean code, or you know exactly how to apply clean code or S.O.L.I.D principles into your React code, well, I've got the right tutorial for you. So I've already put a tutorial in here on YouTube like a year, or I think 2 years ago right now, almost 2 years ago, that got a lot of attention, a lot of views, and a lot of people loved it. There's only right way to react or to write React clean code and S.O.L.I.D principles. So I really advise you guys to go ahead and actually watch this video specifically before coming to this one, so you can understand every single S.O.L.I.D principles, since we're going to apply a lot of them throughout the video. And in general, just understand how clean code works and how you can write better React components. All right, so to get started with our button component in here, we gotta first understand what a button does. So if you're just trying to refactor something, or specifically like a piece of code or React components, or literally anything, like a general rule in refactoring, you should always first understand what the code is doing, how is it working, and exactly what's going wrong with the code itself, so you can later on, when you refactor, you eliminate the bad code. So for us in here, our button component is pretty simple. All it does actually has a button interface in here. So because we're using TypeScript, we gotta actually define our interface in here for the button. And of course, this interface actually extends from the button HTML attribute. So basically, this will take any regular standard HTML button attribute and actually add it to this interface, since we're extending from that. And of course, on top of that, we're going to go ahead and actually add a couple of properties in here, or props, like text, icon size, icon position, children. There is a plethora of stuff. I'm going to go to this in details in a little bit. There's another function in here that actually you get variants. So this basically allows you to get the different variants from like the background color to like if you have got a variant like primary, secondary, successor, it knows you get all the theme colors for that particular button variant. If you want to get the button size in here, you got a bunch of sizes like medium, small, and large, of course. So next in here for styling, we're not using Tailwind CSS or anything, we're actually using just stock components with vanilla CSS. So we're just using CSS and JS in here, and we're putting literally everything inside of that one. So the code is a little bit hard to understand exactly what's going on. We've got like bold text in here, integrating it from that. Later on in here, we're using get variants, so many stuff. We got the icon container as well. We're using stock components for creating a div. And last but not least, or the most important part for us, is the button component here. So the button component has a props, we're just using the use history, which is a hook that allows you to manage the browser history, or if you're familiar with like how React's router basically works, that's how you can route and actually change the path or go from one page to another. You do history.push and you go to that. You got like an on-click handler in here for clicking on the button. And the most important part is actually the rendering part of the button here, where all the magic and the GSX is happening. And this is actually the ugliest part so far. It's basically where the evil comes from for that particular button. So of course we're checking out, props children, we're just returning a button wrapper in here, and we're just doing a lot of conditional rendering in here. So we're checking, if it's loading, we render the button wrapper. And if you notice, every single time we actually do a conditional rendering, we have to re-render the whole button itself. So we're not putting the GSX and doing conditional rendering inside of it, but we're just like re-rendering the whole thing. So like we are repeating ourselves so many damn times. And if you gotta change something, for example, the button wrapper in here, let's say you want to add a new prop or something, you gotta do it for all of these, like literally just gonna keep doing. For example, if you had a change on this on click, you're gonna go on every single instance that has this on click and actually change that. This is ridiculous. I know I've actually put this code. I don't know why I did it this way. Maybe I was in a rush, maybe I didn't have time, but this is not the right way to do it. So after, I don't know, a couple of years, 4 years or something, I finally understood that, wow, this code is really horrible. And it actually keeps going. keep checking of the props icon in here. We check like the icon position. We check, there's so many awesome or horrible stuff. It's not awesome, it's very horrible stuff. And here, just doing a quick demo of how we can utilize that button. We're gonna cover up that later on just to demonstrate when we refactor the code and, you know, when before refactoring that one. So as I said before, to get started with this one, I'm gonna go ahead and copy. So I first literally like look through code in here. As I said before, you need to understand exactly what the code does, how it works, before you can jump ship and actually start refactoring. Because if you don't understand what the component does and how it works and the ins and outs of the component, like the props, what is it using as, you know, for styling, like CSS, like everything is going inside of that component from the GSX to the CSS part. You gotta understand it first before you can refactor anything. So here, to start refactoring, what I like to do, I mean, there's many ways, but for me, what I like to do is actually start from the code I want to refactor, because that's actually a little bit easier and it's going to give us the context. But what you can do is actually start from scratch and, you know, have the code side by side and start working on it. But I'm going to just choose it this way. So I'm going to go to the refactor button in here and actually just go ahead and paste the component as is. And I'm going to start making changes right into the file in here. So let's get started with refactoring the button. So we got the interface button props in here. I don't care about that one. We got the variants in here for just styling. So those are actually styling stuff. This is a style component. I don't care about it just yet. We're going to do that in a little bit. We're just going to convert this to Tailwind CSS. I don't need this one. But what I need to start with is the main component here. Is actually where everything is going to start to, you know, connect together and where things actually are going to start happening. And the most important part of any component, as you probably already know that, for any React component basically, is the GSX part. So because, you know, that's the heart and soul of the component. This is actually where the rendering is happening, you know, all the magic, that's the UI part of it. So that's like, you know, I don't know, 80%, 70% of the components. So you got to start there for refactoring. And our part over here is actually really horrible. So I've got a bunch of if statements and I gotta first understand exactly what it's doing. So the first one is actually checking if the children are valid. So if props children, if it is, we simply just return button wrapper, put the children there, pass any props we want, and pass in the click handler in here, and that's cool. Otherwise, if it's loading, and I don't know if this is why this is actually coming after this one, because if it's just children, it could just like return this. I mean, I think that's a bug already, but anyway, we can move forward. So we got props loading in here. So if we check if it's actually loading, we're going to go ahead and return the same button wrapper before passing props. We say it's disabled. We don't need to pass in on click in here because it's loading. So there's no clicking happening. We pass in props.text now because apparently for some reason it decided to have two kind of props that could have the same thing, children and text. So literally like these, you don't need this one. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just use children. So, okay. So go back in here. We got the text in here. This should have been children, but I don't know why it did it. We're going to remove that in a second. And what I'm putting in here, the icon container, I'm putting this minimal spinner for the actual loading. So this will actually go ahead and show the loading spinner because we got this is loading true. Fair enough. Second part in here, we're going to use the React is valid element to check if props icon is a valid React element. And what I mean by React or valid React element is something like this, something that was rendered. So this is actually what a valid React element. So if it checks if it's a valid element, you're going to render this one, which is basically a button wrapper again. It puts the icon container in here. It doesn't re-render like we did in here, or as we're going to use the font awesome in here. We're just like passing the props icon because it has already been rendered outside from props. So we're just passing it through and making that one. All right, cool. So this is the first part of the icon. The second part of the icon, we check if props icon and the icon position is left. So if the icon position is left, we go ahead and put it on the left side. So this is basically where we render the icon. This is, you know, the children or the text of the button, and this is the whole button wrapper. So if it's on left, we render that before the text right over here. But on the other hand, if it's in the right, we go ahead and render it right before. So we render the text before, and we basically render the icon in here right after, which means the icon is going to come on the right hand side of the, you know, compared to the button text, or particularly the button children. So I'm doing two conditions just to do something like this, and this clearly violates the OCP principle, the open close principle. So let's say we want, I don't know, maybe an icon to come below the actual button text, or, you know, above it or something like that. You can tell me that, oh, you can use CSS, but yes, the point is you don't need to do these. You don't need to actually specify how things are actually rendered. You need to leave this to the user, and by leaving this to the user, you need to just give them all the control they need to render the icon and just provide with the icon through the like props. So there's a bad thing as well. And last but not least in here, we're checking, oh, else. I don't know why I'm doing this else part in here. Basically the same thing. So I'm checking if it's not children, I'm just going to go ahead and use the text in here. And that's basically the same thing as happening on the top in here. So now after we understand the GSX, we can just go ahead and start making. So there's a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of else statements in here that absolutely not needed. So simply in here, I can just go and abstract this one into a very, very simple like GSX part in here that's going to basically take care of the majority of stuff. So I'm here, I'm simply just going to do return. I'm going to do return a button, please. So this is basically a button. I'm not going to use the button wrapper in here because I'm going to convert that style components into Tailwind CSS in a second. But first I want to render this one. So make sure to pass in like whatever props you've got. Make sure to pass in like the onClick in here if you've got the onClick handler. And last but not least in here, as I said before, we want to use props.children and make sure to always destructure your props because I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, you can do it, but for me, I like to destructure the props because it's easier to work with. So here, I'm going to go ahead and destructure the props of children. So you can use the children right over here inside of the button. And so far, so good. Now, the next part I need to worry about is actually the loading part. And this one is fairly simple. So all you need to do is go copy this one. And because I've already got the ease loading, so I can do ease loading from the top in here. And you see these children, I'm just going to go ahead and render that one. Or maybe I need to put this one like this. So you check, oh, if it's loading and so we do conditional rendering. So let me just, I can't spell or type ease loading. So I got isLoad in here, got icon container, minimal spinner. So this simply just like eliminates this whole thing in here. So if it's loading, I'm going to render this one as simple as that. I also notice in here, we got disable true. So if you want to actually disable that one, we can just simply do disabled if it's loading. I mean, very simple, right? All right, cool. So all of this part in here, or all the creepy GSX that is left in this one, is actually handling the icon, and particularly handling the icon position, whether it's right, left, and how to render it. As I said before, you don't need to actually take care of that one. You're basically violating the open-close principle. So every single time you want to change the position or change how the button reacts to the position, you need to go inside of the button, change the button, which basically gonna, trigger a lot of mess. You don't want to do that. Just delegate whatever icon rendering strategy to the user. So whoever is going to call that button is going to decide how the icon is going to be rendered just by passing in props or a valid React element through the props to the button. And the button just simply renders out. It doesn't care about how it renders it out, from directions to styling to literally nothing. So here, already got the icon on the top in here inside of the prop. So you got icon, whether it's font awesome props icon or the React elements. So I don't need this one. Simply I'm just going to remove the font awesome because now I only accepted like, basically a React elements. So all of this code is going to be, erroring out for me. So simply right here, I just go ahead and render the icon. And first I need to destructure the icon as I said before. Destructuring is cool. So we got the icon in here. I'm going to render the icon. And you're probably wondering, oh, we're rendering the icon on the right hand side of the button text in here. So what's the point? Of course, you still need to render it this way, but how you can control the direction is actually in a lot simpler way than doing it this way. So the simpler way in here is actually using Tailwind CSS or passing a class name to the button in here and just telling it to use, flex box, whether you want to flex reverse, like row reverse, from left to right to left. Simple as that. Just use simple CSS or styling just to revert the, the direction of the icon and the text of the button. So this will eliminate a lot of trouble. And just like that, simply just like that, we eliminated all of this code in here. We don't need it anymore. I mean, with a simple styling and a simple easy peasy implementation, we got rid of a huge amount of trouble in there and a lot of GSX that is not needed and very complicated into something like this that is just simple. It renders a button, children, with an ease loading, if it's, prop is ease loading true, and a simple icon. All right, so now with the button is cool. What about the styling? We're using style components and we want to actually convert this into Tailwind CSS. So we no longer want to use this vanilla CSS because it's too complicated and style components are not, server-side rendered or stuff. If you want to use it with Next.js, you can't just yet. So it's better just to fall back and use Tailwind CSS. So how can we convert this very easily from vanilla CSS or style components / vanilla CSS into Tailwind CSS? Well, you can use the help of ChatGPT, of course. So simply in here, I'm just going to go ahead and select all the code in here and just go ahead and copy paste it. I mean, variants in here are not needed because we need to implement that by ourselves. But I just go ahead and copy this one. I can go back. I've got already ChatGPT in here. And just for the sake of this one, you can use ChatGPT 3.5 or better if you have 4, yes. But I just want to use this, like the free way and just showcase to everybody that you can go and use the free version of ChatGPT and you can get good results. And of course, I'm not saying this is not going to make any mistakes. So you have to keep an eye of mistakes or anything that's going on. So you always need to double check whatever code that is generated by ChatGPT. But for the most part, it's going to help you a lot. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask it, can you convert like the following styled component code into Tailwind CSS? Okay, and I'm just going to give it a code in here, click enter and see what it does. So apparently it knows that I'm using React and it kind of like returns a simple, component button in here. We got bold text with height children and it basically returns, I think, a pretty good Tailwind CSS classes in here or string. So I think we are on the right part. So let me just go and copy the string in here. I don't need anything else. I just need this template literal sort of string in here so it can pass in the width and height. So if I go back in here and go back to the button right over here, so you got prompts, on click, whatever. So I can just go and do class name equals, or just put it this way, and we got ourselves that. Now, of course, with height, bold text, and rest.disabled, I don't know why it uses rest.disabled in here, but I can just, fall back to is disabled because that's the props I'm actually accepting. I need to actually go in and distract the width, height, and bold text, which is a boolean to tell us whether the text is bold or not. And this way, you can use it with Tailwind CSS with the help of ChatGPT, and you're easily converting that into Tailwind CSS. But of course, don't expect ChatGPT to basically give you the perfect solution. As I said before, always double check. So because we're handling in here, we're dealing with a simple button, this is not a big of a deal. But if you're handling or dealing with a little bit more complicated sort of component like a dialog or a popover or something, you may want to keep an eye on this. And in fact, I think it missed one teeny tiny detail, which is actually the margin right in here. So if the last of type, I'm using this last of type to basically remove the margin from the last kind of like button elements on a list of button elements. So I kind of like think ChatGPT missed that part, because I don't see it using any last. So I can just go and add this one pretty easily. So I can all I simply do just last and margin, I think margin left. So I can do margin right 0. And if it's not last, margin right maybe 4 or something. Now, this actually is so far so good, but it's not as good because we still need to go ahead and implement, the different variants in here, the sizes, which if we do inside of Tailwind CSS in here, it's going to just make the code look a lot uglier and very hard to understand. So we're going to use template literals. We're going to just try to incorporate some props right into the Tailwind CSS in here to do, if it's disabled, do this. If it's not disabled, do this. A lot of rubbish code in general, which is not going to make it cleaner anyway. So like for us, there's a really cool library that I've been in love for quite some time that I've just been using it literally in all my projects right now. It's called the Class Variance Authority, or where they call it the CVA. This actually uses Tailwind CSS behind the scenes and gives you kind of like variance kind of object style with a very, very easy to use API that's just going to make everything look super smooth. So simply just go to cva.style in here to basically go and install this one. It's basically you can install it pretty much on everywhere. There's a VS Code in here or NeoVim or WebStorm kind of configuration to use the Intel license. And you can basically use it with Astro, React, Svelte, Vue, and others. All right, so I've already installed this one. I can go ahead and get started in using this one. So I'm going to go right under the top in here. We've got the different variants. I'm going to use it on the bottom. Well, let me just clean up this style component because I no longer need this one because I've already implemented what I needed. I don't need this one, the icon container in here. I'm just going to leave it for a second just for a reference. I've got the different variants in here. And let me just go and create my class variant sort of button. So I'm going to do const. I'm going to name this button with a lowercase because this is not like a React component. You don't need to do an uppercase B for this one. So you do button CVA and you make sure you go ahead and import this one. So I'm just going to do import CVA from, it's called Class Variance Authority. I know it's a long name, but it's a very cool library. So going down in here, I can go and use CVA in here. So the first argument it takes in here is actually the base class. So this, you put whatever Tailwind classes you want, and these classes are actually like base classes that you want to apply throughout all the variants and all the styles. You will understand what I'm saying in a second. So for our button in here, so you can take stuff that doesn't need specific values. For example, the width in here, I'm using like width or width auto, or maybe height in here. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and even these are not right just yet because you can't just incorporate width as is in here in Tailwind CSS. So even ChatGPT, as I said before, could get stuff wrong sometimes. So I'm going to get all of this sorted out in a second. So I'm going to copy the base class in here. So the base class basically getting this with the different all the stuff. So let me just go and copy literally everything. I'm going to clean this one up right over here in the CVA. So I'm just going to go put it in the CVA. So I don't need this particular height. This bold medium text, I don't need it. And this disable stuff, I don't need it for now. I'm just going to implement it in a second. I can go to remove this template literal. What is going on in here? Okay, so if I just put everything, so basically this is actually the base class stuff that, you know, that are not going to change to the components. So there's no changes in that styles. They're like style that just work for pretty much all the different variants. So it's actually basically what you want to do for that. So this is basically this base class like flex, justify center, paddings in here, line height, cursor, pointer for the button, and transitions and stuff. Now the next stuff in here, in the next object, so the configuration object, this is actually where you provide variants. So with this, you provide an object called variants, and inside of these variants, you can provide literally all the variants you want. For example, I want a variant. So these variants in here and this variant, you can call this whatever you want. They have no relation in here, but I just like to call mine variants. So for the variant in here, it's another object, and literally it can be anything. For example, if you want the button can have a primary theme, can have a secondary theme in here, or maybe you can have a success theme and it can have a danger theme. Of course, I'm not coming with these things from my head. All of these are like, you know, what the already variants that are available for our original button. So we want to actually make sure we use the same background color in here and what else. So I just going to add this one real quickly. So the primary in here is going to have a background color of something like this. So the background color, and I want to use text white. Basically, the secondary, want to use a different background color for the secondary, text white as well. All right, cool. So I basically just copied the styles from the different variants in here right into our Tailwind class in here into the variant object. So here later on in the CVA on the button, we can just tell it whether primary, secondary, success, or danger, and it's going to apply specifically what it needs. It doesn't need to go through all the cumbersome, all the trouble going through doing, you know, style components and incorporating one prop into another, all that mess, not needed anymore. So that's for the variant. For size, basically you can do the same thing. So we can have small, medium, and large. So next, or alongside the variant in here, I can just go ahead and do size, and it can paste in small, medium, and large for text, small, base, and large. Now we also have this. We have the bold text in here, which is a Boolean. So you can continue using this way, or you can improve this one to a text, and you can literally allow it to pass whatever you want instead of a Boolean in here that converts into whether bold or medium. Of course, for basically for the font weight in here. So we can simply go ahead and do the same thing for the fonts in here. So you can do fonts. You can have bold with font 700 in here, or font medium. And of course, the last thing you want to do in here is actually make sure you've got default variants for the different stuff. For example, the default variant in here, if it's not provided, is going to be primary, size medium, and the font is going to be medium. And hallelujah. So here we've put all our Tailwind CSS styles, literally everything we need. We just put them into the CVA in here, or class variant authority, into a simple object with different variants in here. The code looks really smooth and super easy. If you want to add a different size, you can go in and add a size in here without like any cumbersome, without making the code harder to understand or anything, or harder to maintain. If you want to add another variant, you can do that. Anything you want, you can add that. So of course, if you compare using it this way with doing custom functions and reinventing the wheel, I would go with this class or CVA thing every single time. Awesome. So I don't need this one anymore. I don't need the variants. I don't need these functions. And I can just live with my own button in here. And this button, we can just head down in here. And now we don't need any of these. So we can just go ahead and remove the class name. So simply for the CVA to be used, you just go ahead and call that button, which is just a function. When you call it, it's going to return the right Tailwind CSS set of classes in here. And here it takes an object of whatever variant you want. So as clear as you've got in our, props interface in here, already got a variant and a size. size, and they have, you know, the different typings like primary, secondary, success, and error. So that's what you want to use. So you can go back in here, so the props, I can just go and do variance, I can do size, and we simply just go and pass this one. So variance, you can pass that one, you can pass size. So these can be easily be passed from the props right into the variant component here with no troubles, and you don't need to introduce any other code. And it's already told me in here you can't use undefined. So of course, because I'm reinventing the wheel, and likely for us, CVA in here doesn't allow you to do that, or just kind of like prevents you from shooting yourself in the foot. So instead of like creating the variants in there or creating the types for the different variants of the CVA you've actually just, you know, put together in here, instead of doing that, it actually provides you with typings. So you can go from the variant in there, you can go and import variant props, and these variant props, you can go down right where you're using the interface, whether you can extend from this one, or you can just use the end in TypeScript in here just to do variant props, and you can use type of, and the button in here, the CVA you've done before, and basically it's going to give you the typings. Now variant has its own correct type in here, and the size has its own correct type, and even the font in here has its own correct type, and if you just look into it, that's pretty cool. And also, we don't need bold text, height, width, we don't need that anymore. And yeah, we already passed these things. I just need to pass in the font again, and we're cool. Now, talking of width and height, remember our previous component already had a deal with width and height in here, and it did it somehow with style component. So if I just go and search with width and height, we're actually using this one, we're incorporating it. So if there is a width and height, I just go and use that specific custom width. I don't know why we would want to do this for the button. I don't really recommend it. Just let the CSS figure out the width and height in here. All you need to do is actually adjust the font size and the font weights and those kind of stuff, the padding. But if you insist and you want to use this one, of course you can use that one with CVA as well. So you can just grab the width and height in here from the props, and you go right into the CVA in here. And the CVA, likely for us, actually allows you to provide a custom class name. So you can do class name in here, and that class name you can basically provide whatever you want, whatever Tailwind CSS custom class name you want. And this one simply just, you know, I've already copied the class name, I think. So you can just pass it like this, and you can just put width in here, incorporate the width, and incorporate the height. I said before, I don't recommend this one, but you still can do it. Now, there's actually one last thing we need to provide. It's actually a custom class name that can fly from outside the button through props to inside the button here to apply a custom Tailwind CSS class name in here. And most particularly, we're going to use this one for the icon position. So to be able to actually to merge different or multiple kind of like Tailwind CSS classes, you can use this package Tailwind merge to actually efficiently merge Tailwind CSS classes without any JavaScript, or in JavaScript without any style conflicts. So you can just go and install this one, Tailwind merge in here, and you can import the TW merge. So I've already did this one, I imported it. I can just go and use the TW merge right over here. And for this one, you can just provide whatever class name in here, and you can provide the other class name, of course. So remember to go ahead and use that class name from the destructure in here. So you can just do class name again, and I can pass in the class name. Now, this is actually one way to do the icon positioning, or the other way, which is the best way, of course, is using the CVA again in our favor with a different kind of variant. So going back to the CVA in here, going to definition, I've already got a bunch of variants in here, and I can just go in and do icon position, okay? And this one allow me to basically do whatever position we want. For example, I want left and right. So for left, I want something like this, and for right, I want something like this. So for left, that means we want to inverse the stuff. We want to inverse like the flex row in here. And because we're using flex, and by default it's a flex row. And here on our icon, it's coming at the end. That means currently it's actually always by default sitting on the right hand side. If we want to revert it to the left in here, we need to go ahead and do flex row inverse. So for this, so you simply in here do flex row reverse, and this will reverse this thing. And otherwise, just do flex row the normal way in here, and it's going to be on the right hand side. So simply in here, you need to go ahead and destruct this one. So I can do the icon position again, and go ahead and copy the icon position, and I can go ahead and paste it right over here. Another thing in here I forgot to add is actually I don't want to show any icon when it's loading. So when it's loading, I only want to show this specific icon in here. So that means I can do if it's not loading and icon. And hallelujah, that's it. We did the refactoring of the whole component in here very, very easily. But you're probably noticing one teeny tiny thing that needs to be changed is the interface props in here. It needs a little bit of cleanup. So we no longer need the icon size in here. We don't need the icon position. Children, we need to leave that one alone. We don't need text anymore. We only want to use children. Class name, yes. 2 in here. I'm going to talk about this in a second. We got the icon margin. Not anymore. Is loading, yes. Width and height, yes. But I don't recommend that one. But yes, for now, for this specific sake of components. Bold text in here, no. Button theme in here, not anymore. Yes, no, it looks a lot cleaner. All right, cool. So our button in here looks a lot simpler compared to the previous implementation in here that looks a lot like hell and it's very complicated. I don't know, if you look at it just from the first glance in here, you don't know exactly what's happening because you see a lot of else, kind of like statement and conditional rendering and a bunch of stuff and repetitive kind of like button re-rendering stuff in here or rendering the button over and over again. So then basically just repeating yourself, a bunch of horrible stuff happening. We're not like adhering to the single responsibility principle. We're not adhering to the open close principle. A bunch of mistakes happening in here. But if you compare it to the new button component that was just refactored in here the modern way, we eliminated a lot of stuff. We eliminated kind of like stock components, so we don't need this one CSS anymore. We eliminated just the use of like the icon or just making the component kind of like OCP or open close principle kind of adhering, which means we don't need that one anymore. I don't need this generating theme styles anymore again. But overall, this is a perfect one. So now when it comes to rendering, we can render the buttons something like this. For example, the submit button here by default is going to have a primary variant. But if you ever want to change the variant, you can just put that one using some also mental license. You can just have, oh, danger, primary, secondary, success. Maybe I want this to be a success button. For the second one in here, I'm just using, font bold. Yes, use some font bold in here. Maybe if you want to use some variants, yeah, welcome in. I'm going to use the secondary in here. And notice in here, we're just passing in. And now you can actually render icons however you like. You can put them in here, but of course, it's not the main idea of putting it in there. So it's better just go ahead and put the icon right over here, what it's meant to be. So this will be rendered, the part of the icon. But of course, you still can put it in here. You can just do whatever you want in the side of the button. Or maybe instead of using it as a string, you can just go ahead and import the actual icon in here from the font awesome. Of course, it depends on what font awesome or sort of like React icon library kind of using. But the results are actually astonishing. So this is basically our new button versus the original button here. They basically look the same thing. So basically you can use like, the button in here, the icon, you can use different variants. Like this is a success one. If you, for example, flip the icon in here, you can do icon position and you can set, I want the icon position to be on the left. If you click there, the icon position to the left in here, and you can mix and match with the styling however you like, of course. And all of this looks pretty cool. So instead of like secondary, for example, we want to do primary, and when the variants in there and the primary, this is actually how it looks like. Or maybe danger, if you like danger stuff for like errors, that's how it looks like, and it's so on and so on and so on. And of course, if you compare this to our original button, this one basically identical stuff when it comes to UI, but the code between this one new refactored component and the original component here is so much different. And of course, so much cleaner as well. So anyway, guys, this was just taking an old component from like 4 or 3 years ago and actually refactoring it into modern ways, into Tailwind CSS, and making it cleaner, make the component cleaner, make it adhere to the S.O.L.I.D principles as well, and make just the code a lot easier to read through and a lot more maintainable. So if you like this type of video tutorials, I can do more of them. We can go in real world kind of production code or on GitHub or something, or even you can send me your own sort of like projects and go through them. I can just go and try to improve the code, tell you what's going on, what's wrong here and there. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you want more content like this, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to throw a couple of more videos.